Hello, and this week I'm going to be giving you your feedback on the week 8 questions, early Middle Ages. This video is going to cover the chapter discussion questions about Charlemagne and the Vikings and that whole period. The first question was, what was the significance of Charlemagne and his empire for the history of the West? Perhaps the main significance is he reinvented the imperial idea. The Pope crowned him as emperor. There's a lot of debate about what that really meant, which you discussed a little in your discussion. I don't really have time to go into that whole issue, except say it would be important for what happened later in the Middle Ages, what the relationship between the Pope and the Emperor was going to look like. It's often quoted that Charlemagne brought together the Germanic, the Roman, and the Christian ideas in the West. He was a Germanic Frankish king. As he quotes, Holy Roman Emperor, he had a Christian tinge to his rule. He promoted the church. And Roman, he reinvented the idea of having a Roman empire and a Roman emperor. He's also sometimes called the father of Europe. He unified not all, but a lot of Western Europe under his rule. And many modern nations of Europe like to claim descent from Charlemagne, particularly France and Germany. In the breakup of his empire that occurred under his grandchildren, under his grandsons, a Western and an Eastern third emerged, which became the basis for the later countries of France or Germany, although a lot had to happen between that division in the 9th century and the modern nations of those names emerging. And then there's a Carolingian Renaissance, so-called, his promotion of education and learning, establishing schools attached to monasteries. He wanted to give his kingdom and his church within that kingdom a standardization of books and of doctrine, a standardization of writing systems. He had many Roman books copied. Many of our manuscript editions of ancient works go back not to the ancient world itself, but to Charlemagne's time. The second question was, what impact did the Vikings have on medieval Europe? Well, clearly they caused a lot of damage, but I wanted you to look beyond the immediate headlines of the raiding and the killing and the pillaging. Although that did happen, many monasteries, which were centers of learning at that time, were destroyed by Viking raids in the eastern part of England. But they did have a more positive contribution as well. They established trade routes and towns. Cities such as Dublin and Kiev, which are major cities to this day in Europe, were established as Viking trading centers. There's a bit of an historical cliche question, which goes, were the Vikings raiders or traders, which emphasizes that they were merchants as well as warriors and raiders. And also they had an unintended consequence on Europe and its political development. They shaped the nature of the political entities that they attacked. In England, the unintended consequence was greater unity. Wessex, the last remaining Anglo-Saxon kingdom, as the last man standing after the Viking invasions, became the basis for the later unification of England, as Alfred the Great's sons and grandsons reconquered the Danish-ruled parts of England and unified them into a single Kingdom of England. In France, the opposite happened. In the West Frankish lands, what became the Kingdom of France, the people best able to deal with local raids were not the king himself, but the local lords, and they emerged as the dominant powers in France rather than the king himself, a situation which would remain until round about the year 1200. I'm going to end there to stop this video getting too long. I'll bring in a second video addressing the third question about manorialism.